All right. Hello, everyone. I think we are live at the moment. Let me just double check over on YouTube just to make sure that things are good to go. It's been a little while since I've live streamed here on YouTube. Let's see. So, one moment here. I'm just having some problems making sure that I have everything linked in the right place. Okay, looks like we're live. We're good to go. Hello, my name is Hector Acuna. Welcome back to another video here on my channel. I'm an artist living in the Milwaukee area of Wisconsin, and it's been a few weeks since I've done a live stream, so I thought I would pop back on and share some updates from the past month here in my studio. For those of you who are unfamiliar with my art practice, I kind of split my time throughout the year as a studio painter, but then I also travel for events and competitions and exhibitions in the plein air sort of US circuit. And some of you who are subscribed maybe discovered my work through the plein air, community. Some of you maybe are people that have been following me over the years because of my studio work. I'm happy that you're here either way. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to see what I'm working on and to learn more about my artwork, which is what we're going to do today. So today is Friday, May 3rd, and this is the first live stream that I'm trying that isn't really very like topic focused or painting focused. It's not meant to share a body of work. It's really just sort of sharing the progress of process and really just pulling back the curtain on what I've been working on. And this gives people an opportunity to follow along with things and works of art and ideas and projects as they unfold over time. So today, I'm focusing on the month of April, as the title suggests. So we're doing kind of a recap style discussion / presentation today. And I've compiled a bunch of images and a couple of videos that are pretty short. Hopefully those will play. We'll see how that goes. But let's go ahead and just get started. So let me pull up my slideshow here. So looking at the month of April in 2024, I was looking at images on my phone and picking out moments that I thought were, memorable and relevant to just the journey and progress, of my work. And obviously this is not a picture of a painting or a picture of me painting. You've probably already, figured out that this is taken from a camping trip. My wife and I went up to Door County at the start of April and camped for 2 nights on the trail, one of the, 2 of the main trails that are in Newport Beach State Park, which is one of the few sort of public parks in Door County that offers camping. And we've camped in that park now a couple of years, but she had scheduled 2 different sites in the weekend of, I think it was April 5th and 6th, so kind of about a month ago. It was pretty cold. During the day, it was really sunny and it got up to like the high 40s, but at night it dipped down to like 33, 35, and our dog, Lenny, who's not pictured here, was pretty chilly. So it was a lot of fun, and I was able to do a little bit of sketching while I was there. So this is a picture of my medium-sized Moleskine sketchbook. I wanted to test out these Blick grayscale markers, which I'm a big believer in sketching. I'm a really, big advocate for making thumbnails and sort of preparing compositions. And even if you're not going to do a preliminary sketch for a painting, I think it's worth sketching and drawing from life as often as possible. And within that part of my practice, I like to experiment with a couple different tools. I know markers, especially kind of grayscale, markers like this are really helpful for studying value relationships and simplifying what you're observing so that you can really focus on the lights and the darks and conveying a sense of dimension or a sense of depth within whatever you're portraying. So I tried out these markers, and to tell you the truth, I'm not totally sold on them. They bleed through the paper, quite a bit. So that's something I'm not used to as part of a sketchbook practice. I like to be able to use every single page in my sketchbooks, and I wish I had this downstairs with me. Maybe at the end of the stream, if I remember, I'll show you that. But otherwise, I'll post or share about the sketchbook at some point down the road. But anyway, what happens is the marker bleeds through. I think because I don't think it really matters if it's alcohol-based or water-based. It seems like markers are going to bleed through your paper if it's not thick enough. And moleskin paper is pretty thick and pretty heavy, so I was a little bit shocked by how much bleed through there was in these drawings. And what I've decided to sort of preserve as much surface area as possible in my sketchbooks is that I have shellacked the opposite side of these marker sketch pages, and I'll do oil painting, or maybe I'll glue in oil sketches into the sketchbook on those pages. So that's my solution. But on one of our hikes during the day, we were hiking along Lake Michigan, and there was this really cool stretch of these rough rocks and these really interesting formations of rock that I wanted to study and just sort of preserve from our trip. So it's a little bit hard to decipher in the drawing what you're looking at. It ended up being somewhat sort of opaque, and there was a lot of combining of shape and form that made it difficult to really push things far away and pull things forward. And again, I think this is why doing value sketches is really useful, is because when we look at the photo, when we look at this part of my subject, the water and the rocks are pretty similar in terms of value, or light and dark. And I'm just looking at the chat real quick. So Todd is asking if I make a sketch in pencil before filling in with the markers. I think I did with this one. Yeah, and so far that's really been my approach. I've done one or two really small thumbnails where it's just, I'm starting with the lightest marker. So I don't know if it's like a 1 or a 2, but you can kind of see it here. I think this is the brightest marker that I have in this 5 or 6 marker set. So that's been helpful to start with that, because you can't really see, if you make a mistake, you can always go over it with a darker marker. And if I don't have a pencil, that seems to be working pretty well so far. But most of the time I use a pencil. And yeah, so I think that was the thing I was surprised by in this sketch, was really trying to figure out, how do I show that the water is separate from the rocks, or that even in the water there's different effects of light, light that's being reflected. We're seeing through the water. We're seeing shadows on water, so that there's all of this weird perceptual shifting happening in terms of value. And what I would use as information that can help me in the future from that experience, right? Because I think that's how sketching and sketchbook practices should be thought of, in my opinion, is that it's a space to learn and to grow and to try different things and to hopefully gain some kind of insight into understanding the process, or understanding your materials, or understanding composition, or any of those other main themes within painting. So here in this case, what I really learned was, okay, when I go to make a painting, that differentiation between the rocks and the water is going to have to happen through some other means, whether that's temperature, whether that's hue, whether that's texture of paint. So there's different ways that we can build contrast in our paintings that aren't rooted in value or in light and dark, right? So that's really the thing that I learned in this process. So anyway, let's keep moving. So here's another image I just wanted to share with you. This is just a picture of me standing by a tree, obviously, but what was really exciting about this camping trip is that we picked a site that was on the northern loop of the park. And back in high school, I camped at this site that we're looking at here, where this tree is located, with my brother and some of our friends back in high school. Our friends Nick and Ryan are sort of, the four of us were like a cohort of best friends all throughout high school, and every year we still hang out a lot. And we found a tree that we had kind of scratched our names into at one point in time. It was really hard to find and really hard to see, but I don't know if I should share that on YouTube, but there were a bunch of other names that people had put in this particular tree at that time too, so it was kind of cool to be able to see that. But anyway, keep moving. This was the last picture, or one of the last pictures we took on the trip, and you can see, the sunset that we got to catch one of the nights. There's really beautiful color palette of warm and cools, and I'm not a big sunset painter in plein air, and it's something that I don't often seek out, but when I'm standing in front of a sunset like this, it doesn't hurt to take a photo and try to learn what we can from the photograph. So that's why I'd preserve this, and it's just generally just a really beautiful palette of colors. I really love the smooth and subtle gradation from cool to warm and then warm to cool. And I've been painting a lot in my studio recently, and I've been sort of mining through different images for references, as I'll talk about here in a little while. Moments like this could definitely be really useful for shapes that maybe are less objective or representational, and really just more about color relationships or edge relationships and things like that. So that's why, part of the reason why I wanted to preserve that moment. Let's go back. Here we go. Part of the other reason we were in Door County that weekend was to deliver artwork for an exhibition at the Miller Art Museum in Sturgeon Bay. I'm very happy to share that I was invited into a small group show of plein air painters for an exhibition at the museum opening later in May. There's 5 of us total who are going to be in the exhibition. I think I might have mentioned this in my last stream, but if you're hearing about this for the first time, it's going to be myself, Shelby Keefe, Mark Anderson, I think Stephanie Lord is another artist that's in the group, and then Brian Sindler. So there's 5 of us total. And I'm really excited and honored to have my work included. I'm a big fan of a lot of their works that I've seen, and it's going to be exciting to see more of their paintings in person. One of my favorite things about this opportunity that's on the agenda is that on June, I believe it's June 6th, which is a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check my calendar, and I can confirm this with you. So on my website, I have my schedule of events on the homepage, which I'm looking at right now. And the exhibition is opening on the 25th, and it runs until July 6th. But on June 6th, there is a panel discussion. So about halfway through the exhibition, we're going to do this, or maybe a couple weeks into the exhibition, we're doing this public talk kind of panel discussion with, I'm assuming all of the artists, but maybe some of the artists. And that's going to be from 3 to 4 p.m. So if you're in the Door County area or Green Bay, Fond du Lac, anywhere like northeast of Wisconsin, and you want to drive out for the afternoon to Door County, or really Sturgeon Bay, it's the sort of entryway to Door County. I'd love to see you there and to share more about my process and talk amongst the other artists and really just share my experience in plein air painting. So all of that to say, this is one of the paintings that's going to be in the show. This is one of the last paintings I made in plein air in 2023, and it's a painting of a apartment complex just down the street from where I live. And actually I had some images in the slideshow that I removed just for time, but actually the other day, earlier this week on Monday, I was working in our garage on a project that I'll be talking about here soon. And all of a sudden, this woman, police officer, walked across our driveway from my neighbor's backyard, which I thought was odd. And she was carrying this long rifle and was pretty well armed. And I saw her I was sort of following her from the garage, like watching where she was going. And it looked like she was peeking inside of our house, which really freaked me out because I was by myself at home. And so I kind of walked out there, I was going to be like, hi, can I help you? And she sort of saw me as I came around the corner of the house, and she told me to stay in my garage because there was a situation happening actually in this apartment complex that I've included in this painting. The painting is called Parking in Private. And I have a few videos on my YouTube channel that share moments of making this painting. So if you'd like to see it in its progression over like 4 or 5 sessions, check out that series of videos on my YouTube channel. But anyway, it turned out that there was an issue, kind of a domestic issue, I guess, in this apartment complex, and there ended up being like 20 or 30 officers within 3 or 4 blocks of where we live. And this has never happened in this area of Wisconsin where my wife and I have been living for the past couple of years. So it was very odd. And I just thought it was kind of unique and strange that, I was like, hey, I've painted that building before. This is really bizarre. But anyway, this is a painting that is, I think, 22 inches square, somewhere in that range. And I built this white float frame for it, which, on a white wall, it's really hard to see. But you can kind of get a sense for the object here that's going to be in the exhibition. Here's another one that I had recently framed up in also a white float frame, which I think looks really elegant and just really kind of classy. And I'm very happy with how the frames turned out and how the paintings feel finished in their frames. So what I like about both of these paintings is that they're very saturated and chromatic. And, I've been really starting to push more of the color intensity in my plein air work in the past year, which has been really enjoyable. And, this one, for example, was a limited palette. So I started with, this sort of pinkish peach color and really tried to limit how far out I ventured into other hues. And I'm really happy with how that created a very encompassing type of space. And we're going to see in another project I'm working on where I actually borrowed this image and have started to reference it in some larger work that I'm really excited about. So both of these paintings are included among 8 paintings that I have in the show. To my knowledge, I think every artist has 8 paintings, so that's going to be close to 50 works of art that you can see in this exhibition. So again, I hope if you're in Sturgeon Bay or the Door County area, I hope that you'll make some time to go and see this show. I know all of my paintings are going to be for sale, so if you're someone who's interested in collecting my work, that's a really great opportunity to do so. All right, if you've been following along with my work on YouTube and on Instagram, then you've probably heard about this year-long residency that I'm currently working on through a gallery in Port Washington, Wisconsin, which isn't too far from where we live. And the program is called Art Servancy, and basically you apply and you get juried in to a cohort of 12 artists. So I'm very honored and happy to be one of 12 artists working in the 2024 to 2025 calendar year. And you get to select a nature preserve or an organization to team up with and partner with to create a relationship and to allow your experiences of a specific place to inspire a body of work or to inspire a series of works. And then in 2025, we will exhibit the work that we created in a 3-person show, I think 2 months at a time. So at some point in 2025, I'll have some of my work exhibited in Port Washington at Gallery 224. So if you're in, again, if you're a local Wisconsin resident or if you're passing through Wisconsin at any point, definitely take a look and, stop by Port Washington to see not just the show that I'll be in, but also any of the other Artservancy shows. So I've decided to team up with the Ozaki, I think it's the Ozaki, oh man, now I'm forgetting, or no, I'm sorry. Well, I guess it is the Ozaki Nature Trust, or there's a group with a name somewhat like that, and they run some of the parks in Ozaki County. The park that I've decided to team with is Bratt Woods, which is also very close to where I live, so it's very convenient to go. And I picked that intentionally because I knew I was going to want to do multiple sessions on plein air paintings, and I didn't want to have to drive 30 minutes or 45 minutes one way, 20 or 30 times throughout the year, if not more. So this is really convenient that I can either drive a few minutes or maybe even bike this summer to work on my paintings. And this is the second painting that I started. It's depicting this small skinny tree here, also in the photo. And I've only worked on it once. So there's really not a whole lot to share. It's the panel is probably somewhere around 8 inches by 16 inches to give you a sense of scale, maybe a little bit bigger than that. And yeah, it's a painting I'm not super excited about, to tell you the truth. So it's one that's sort of been sitting for over a month now, because technically this was started in March. But the other painting, I have one other painting that I've been putting a lot of energy and effort into that I'm excited to share in the presentation today, that I can talk more about later on. So let's go ahead and keep moving. April was a really exciting month in terms of exhibitions because I was included. I had work that was included in 2 Milwaukee exhibitions, and in April we had the gallery night, which I think was like the middle of April, and I was in a inaugural sort of exhibition, or sort of grand opening of a gallery that I've just recently been brought into, and I now have artwork represented with. It's called the Kim Storage Gallery, and Kim is a really wonderful person that I met a little over a year ago, or about a year ago, and she decided to open a gallery, I think at the start of this year, if not like at the very end of 2023, and she has been working really hard to really customize and design the space that she has, which is located in the Marshall Building in the 3rd Ward district of downtown Milwaukee. So I'm glad I'm doing this video because there's still time to catch these shows if you're, again, local to Wisconsin. So it was really fun for gallery night to kind of go out on the town and have artwork on display in 2 different places and get to meet some new people and start to see their response to some of these paintings that either have been shown once or twice before, or maybe have never been exhibited publicly. So we started our night over at Kim's Gallery, and it's a really beautiful space. Apparently there was a wall that they had to build. They had to redo the floors. She decided to keep the Cream City brick that's on 2 of the walls that also have 6 or 7 windows, these really nice large windows. So there's a wonderful amount of light that comes through the gallery, and she's on the 4th floor of the building. So through the windows you can see this really nice spread of the 3rd Ward district in Milwaukee. And all in all, I just think it's a really gorgeous place to look at art and to experience art. So I'm very honored to have my work represented with Kim. She's a really great person, very professional and passionate about art. So that's like the best combination for a gallery owner and someone who is going to work on sharing your work with the public and hopefully building relationships around your work. So I'm very excited for the future and to share not only plein air paintings, but also some of my studio work with Kim's gallery. So that was something that I was really excited about, because I feel like the past couple of years, it seems like when people want to work with my artwork, they either want to see the plein air stuff or the studio stuff. Rarely is one group or one person asking for both. And when that happens, I feel like it's really special, because, as an artist, even though I work in these two different realms that maybe from the outside appear very different, to me there's a lot of similarities and overlaps, and it is a very symbiotic relationship where something I do outside in plein air, then informs what I want to try with an idea in my studio, and vice versa. So I see them sort of as two halves of the same world, and I'm really excited that she wants to share both of those. So, the last image that I showed was a gentleman who was looking at my two paintings, which are seen on this mobile wall that Kim and her team built. This is a picture of my beautiful wife, Megan. I really love this picture of her, so I wanted to include that today. And it was fun to go look at art this Friday night in Milwaukee, and go to two different galleries. Technically, we went to 3 galleries, but 2 of which had my work, and to share that experience with her is always really special. So I'm very fortunate to have someone to share this part of my life with. And then just for, introductions, this is Kim from Kim Storage Gallery. And, this was taken the day that I went to see the gallery, because she had reached out to me maybe about a month ago, and invited me into the gallery, and just wanted to see if I would be interested. And she said I could come by and see the space and talk more in depth about what to expect, and just that professional relationship. So by the end of that hour-long or 2-hour-long chat that we had and meeting, it was obvious that I was accepting the opportunity, and that I really wanted to be part of the gallery. So I was like, do you mind if I take a selfie with you and just document this moment? And part of that is because, I grew up about an hour south of Milwaukee, maybe 45 minutes to an hour south of Milwaukee. And, especially once I was in college and I really started to become serious about painting and making art, and I was getting more and more, focused and determined that, like, this is a career I wanted to pursue. I started doing more research on art in Wisconsin and art in the bigger cities, and like Madison and Milwaukee, and then looking more broad in the Midwest. And there have been a few galleries in Milwaukee that I've had my eye on and really just respected and admired from a distance when I was in Michigan. But then being back in Wisconsin, I have a lot of admiration and respect for the city of Milwaukee, not just in terms of art, but as a cultural place. I feel like there's a lot of really inspiring people that live in Milwaukee, and I've been looking at that city as a place like I would love to be, considered a Milwaukee artist, and part of that community of creatives. And it's been a goal of mine for a pretty long time, like even before I was in grad school, to have artwork represented in Milwaukee. So when this opportunity popped up with Kim, I remember I was grocery shopping with Megan, and I saw the email come up, and I read it really quick, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was so excited. And I told Megan, I was like, read this email. And we both just kind of like started dancing in the store, and we were just super happy and excited. And, it kind of reaffirms this idea of like, you never know who's watching what you're doing and with your work, and you don't know the people who are supporting you from a distance that maybe you don't see. And everything that we do is an opportunity to, present who we are and what our work is about, and, build a community and foster a community of people that, are kind of just like supporters and people that want to see us succeed and want to help us succeed. And Kim was one of these people that, really supported a lot of what I've been doing the past year. So when this came up, I remember I had told Megan, a few weeks or a few months before the email because I was following Kim's journey with opening the gallery, and I was really excited for her, and I was excited to just, see that space that she was building. And I remember telling Megan one night, we were talking about galleries and the future and just, goals of mine. And I remember at one point I had said something like, there's a woman, Kim Storage, who I met, in Milwaukee, who, if she ever invited me to her gallery, or if she ever wanted to work with me, I would definitely take her up on that, because, like I said earlier, she's really driven, she's really passionate, she's really, dedicated to not just the kind of like marketing commercial side of having a gallery and selling artwork, but also the, what does it really mean to collect an artwork and to curate your own individual space, and, really focusing on kind of the why of this whole process and this kind of creative economy. And I feel like her heart is in the right place, and she has a lot of experience to back up all of those ideas and the passion that she has. So, that's enough, just, sort of praising, just this exciting moment, and really sharing why this is something I'm so excited about. I feel like that's probably enough information on that. I could continue talking for, hours and hours about this new chapter. But anyway, let's keep going. So this is another painting that's with her at the gallery right now. During the first opening show, which I think she had titled The Beginning is Always Today, which I think is a really, just really beautiful title for a show, especially, for your inaugural exhibition opening for your gallery. I think that was a really cool title. Two of those paintings that I had showed in an earlier picture, the one of the car that I painted in Florida at the Lighthouse Plein Air Festival, is with her at the gallery. And then the one next to it is titled Carrying the Moonlight, was this sort of surrealistic, invented object, that incorporates some sort of like bodily human textures and symbolism, but then also architectural space. Those are currently on view in the gallery, and then she's got, I think, like 5 or 6 other paintings kind of in storage so far. And this is one of those. So I had to make 2 frames for the gallery prior to gallery night in Milwaukee. And, those combined with the 2 or 3 that I also had to make for the Miller Art Museum show, kind of can show you at the end of March, beginning of April, I was doing a lot of frame building in the garage, and it was pretty cold. So I'm very happy that the weather has since warmed up quite a bit in April and now in May, because when I have to do woodworking, I'm not freezing my toes and my fingers off. So following the reception at Kim Storage Gallery, Megan and I went over to VAR Gallery. That's VAR. And, again, if you're familiar with my YouTube channel, you definitely have probably heard about my 30 by 30 by 30 egg tempera paintings that I made for this exhibition at VAR Gallery. This was a show that I was really excited to get juried into, because it's a show that I had seen the past year, maybe even the year before that, and I had applied both of those years and I wasn't selected. So to have applied the 3rd time and then be selected was a really big deal for me, and I was very excited. And obviously, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this body of work, because you can always go and visit my YouTube channel and watch a 10-part video series that shows you how these paintings were created, the inspiration behind the ideas, how I created the materials, and just that entire process was pretty much filmed and shared with whoever would like to watch it over on my channel. And anyway, so this was the reception, which was packed. There was a ton of people who came out for the show, and this seems to be pretty standard for this show. It tends to fill up with visitors really fast, and it stays relatively busy all night, which is really cool. And so, I was very excited to come to the gallery and just, again, see what kind of responses my paintings had. One of the highlights from the show was getting to reconnect with someone I went to school with in Stevens Point for college. This is Amanda Langer, who was a dual major, but one of her majors was in studio art, and we had a little bit of overlap in some of our classes, and we've remained in touch on Facebook and social media over the years, which is really nice. But I graduated back in 2015. I think Amanda completed her second degree a couple years after that. And so, along with a lot of those students I was in school with, it's been now almost 10 years since I graduated. So there's a lot of time has passed, and a lot of people I haven't really had a lot of contact with, especially in person. So this was a really special treat to kind of just share a space and share a moment together, because Amanda also was included in the show. You can see her pieces right behind her in the photo. Obviously, this isn't the best way to view artwork, let alone, this kind of artwork. But definitely search Amanda's work on Instagram and just, online, and you can learn more about her sculpture practice. Her pieces incorporated, I think, steel with like sculpted, welded steel with yarn or some sort of, sort of textile material. So there's this really cool contrast between hard and soft materials in her work. And they're pretty abstract initially. And then I think there are definitely some, links that we can form to, themes in nature, themes in, social relationships, things like that. So it's cool to look at work that leaves the door really wide open for interpretation. But anyway, it was fun to reconnect with Amanda at the show. And this is an image of my 30 egg tempera paintings that I created for the show. All of them have their own poplar wood frames that I, painted with a casein paint. So there's this really warm, rich color on the wood that I think really complements the paintings really well and really finishes them off as a sort of solid, unique object. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on the themes of the work or the process, because you can, like I said, you can really learn more about that in depth in that YouTube series. But it's fun to see them on the wall together as a grouping. And, this is a project that I completed pretty much all in the month of January in 2024. And so from the end of January, when I completed this final painting at the bottom, to the middle of April, that was a long time to kind of sort of, anticipate the reception of the work and anticipate, just what people were going to learn and discover in this project, and just to learn from that part of making art, right? And so much of my enjoyment in painting and making objects is seeing what they then generate in terms of idea or discussion or feelings. And the best way to do that is to share the work in person and to watch someone react to it. And for me, that was a really fun aspect to the reception, is just to kind of stand somewhat close to my wall. And, it was, like I said, it was packed. There wasn't a lot of empty space, so you kind of had to weave your way through the crowd. But I wanted to just sort of observe and listen in on, what ideas and what sort of responses people were having to the paintings. And a lot of people were sort of stopping and photographing certain paintings or photographing my list. And I sold one painting during the reception. And then there was a second painting that had sold, I think, by the end of the night. And I don't know if that was in person or online, but the work is available through the gallery's website. So you can purchase any of my paintings right off of their website. The images of my paintings on their website aren't the best images to represent the work, I feel, because you can't really see the frame in the pictures, and because I didn't work in a square format, the image is a square, but all of my panels are a rectangle, so there's this like black border on two sides in all the pictures that I think really doesn't suit my paintings very well. I try not to sort of complain about that kind of stuff, because obviously there's a lot of artists in the show, and there's a lot of sorry, I'm just fixing my camera settings here. I don't know what happened with my my camera, but we'll keep going. I was going to say, it's hard for a gallery that's showing, 30 paintings by 40 artists to, make sure everyone is satisfied with how things are going. But anyway, if you'd like to see my paintings a bit more kind of clearly, head to my website first, and that'll give you a better representation of each of the paintings. And you can really zoom into the details. If you want to learn more about a specific painting, then watch those videos that I keep talking about over on YouTube, or here on YouTube, I should say. All right, let's see. So anyway, that being said, just if you're curious, all of my paintings are priced at $200 US, and I don't know if you buy online, if that includes shipping or not. You can probably find that information at VAR Gallery's website. But if you have any questions about the work, feel free to reach out or share a comment here in the video. All right, let's keep going. So I did want to say, just kind of, because these conversations are also a chance to thank certain people and just to, sort of record, context around some of these kinds of opportunities. And I wanted to just thank VAR Gallery, especially Josh Hintz, who really runs the galleries, and he's also one of the jurors of the show. I also want to thank Jeffrey Morin, who was one of the other jurors for the show. And then the other artist I'm not as familiar with, so I just want to make sure I pronounce their name right before I butcher or get their name totally wrong. Let me search the exhibition page really quick here. Do they have the other juror's name here? I don't know. I'm not seeing their names. Pardon me. Sorry for the delay here. I just I thought that this would have been already shared on their website, but I was mistaken. Let me check real quick here. So I have to go over into Instagram here and find VAR's page and see if I can track down who the other judge was so I can thank them. Let's see. Let's see. No, not there. This was not part of my stream agenda today, was to have this sort of delay here. Let's see. I don't know why the judges' names aren't like listed more frequently. It seems a little bit odd to me. Let's keep going down. Let's keep going down to like really track down. Where is the post about the application process? Is this it? This might be it. Okay, CK Ledesma is the other judge or artist. Judge, who's also an artist, for the 30 by 30 by 30 show. So thank you to CK Ledesma, Jeffrey Morin, and Joshua Hintz for selecting my proposal and my work. I've really enjoyed being part of this opportunity and part of the show. It's been a lot of fun to make this body of work and to just sort of see what can happen with that. Hey, Mark. My friend Mark Anderson is here. Get it together. I know this is the joy of doing things live, is that when things go wrong, they go really wrong. But anyway, let me get back to my images here as I click all over my screen and throw off. Oh boy, where was I here? One moment here, folks, while I get this back how it was. Ay, ay, ay. This kind of stuff is always a joy, right, when this happens. So anyway, one moment while I grab my folder here. Oh my gosh. This is like a ripple effect now. One thing after another. So anyway, all of that to thank the judges of the 30 by 30 by 30 show. Let me pull this back up now and see if I can resize my Finder window here so we can actually see what I'm looking at. All right, and we're back. So that was in middle of April. Got to go to gallery night, which was a lot of fun, and had a really great time seeing the 30 by 30 by 30 show. I think that show is going to be up now until what's going on here? I don't know why this program is. There we go. I'm also just running into some problems, troubleshooting the technology today. So I think we're good. So anyway, Milwaukee Gallery Night was a really good time, and I think the 30 by 30 by 30 show is up for at least another month. I think through the end of May. So again, if you're in the Milwaukee area in the next couple of weeks, definitely stop into VAR Gallery and see that show. There's paintings, there's drawings, there's a lot of mixed media work. There's like sculptural wall-based work. So there's a lot of variety in terms of materials, and also, as you would imagine, a lot of different themes and ideas that artists are exploring. And it's not just a cohort of Wisconsin artists that are in that show. It's actually people from, it's mostly, I think, Midwest artists, but there were a few artists that came out for the reception that were from the East Coast. There was a woman from Pittsburgh that came out. There was a woman from Southern Illinois that drove all the way up. So you're also getting an opportunity to see this really wide survey of work being made by artists across the country, which is really cool. All right, let's move on to the next phase of the presentation. So in August of this year, let's see, in the middle of August, starting the 16th through the 18th, I will be doing a pop-up solo show in the Milwaukee area. It's actually a gallery space in Cudahy, about 10 to 15 minutes south of downtown Milwaukee. And I'm going to exhibit a lot of studio work that I've had just kind of hanging around the studio for the past couple of years that I've been pushing ideas that, again, some of which were informed by what I was doing in plein air, but it's also sort of encompassing a lot of other ideas as well. And it's still representational, but some of the work is surrealistic. It's made from imagination. Some of the work incorporates observational painting. Some of the work is pulling reference from photography or digital collages, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But one of the things I wanted to do for this show is try to scale up my paintings and do a few paintings that are a little bit larger. And it's, I think having this space, knowing that this work is going to be exhibited in a gallery with a lot of space, it feels really exciting to kind of challenge my process and scale things up, knowing that I'll be able to present the work as a body of work. So in April, I spent maybe like 3 or 4 days constructing 3 pretty large, relative to my practice, large substrates, large panels that I then stretched canvas over and primed with various acrylic mediums and primers, and then finished with an oil primer or an oil ground. So from start to finish, it took probably about 3 weeks to make these 3, larger surfaces, but this was taken shortly after I finished actually, putting all of the lumber pieces together. So for a sense of scale, what we're looking at are 3 panels. The smallest one is 3 feet tall by 4 feet, wide, looking at this orientation. The second one, the middle one there, is 4 feet tall by 5 feet wide, and the last one is also 4 feet tall, but 6 feet wide. And these are 1/4 inch plywood panels made out of sandy plywood that I purchased over at Home Depot. And I had them kind of rip them down initially, and then I just sort of, cut the cradles for them. So what's nice about sandy plywood is that it's pretty lightweight compared to birch or oak plywood. And I feel like it might even be lighter than underlayment, which is what construction workers use for flooring. And I know some artists that work on underlayment, but I don't like using it because when you're cutting it, it really sort of separates your wood fibers, and it's really sharp. And when you sand it, it kind of chips away a lot of that material. And I've had issues where, even with canvas, like if it chips a big chunk out of the side of a panel, you end up sort of showing that in the final painting. So the sandy plywood is a lot more durable, and you get some really nice clean cuts with it. So here's an image from when I was oil priming them upstairs in our house, and fortunately it's just Megan and I in our house, so the second floor doesn't really get a lot of use, and I can just open the windows and apply my oil ground and let the fumes just sort of circulate through the second floor, and it doesn't really affect our first floor of the house or my studio, which is down here in the basement. So anyway, it's so far things have been working out really well in terms of space and the process. And something I've done more recently with my oil ground, which is this stuff right here from Williamsburg. This isn't a paid promotion, but for those of you who maybe are looking for more info on painting surfaces and would like to try different oil grounds, this is the only one that I've used. So far, I really like Williamsburg's titanium ground. I've never used like Gamblin's. I know there's a few other companies that make a titanium-based ground, and then there's also lead oil ground, which I've never used because it kind of freaks me out. But for the first year that I was using this product, I would just, scoop it out of the can and apply it onto my canvases or my panels that were already primed with acrylic materials and products, but I wouldn't thin out the medium or the ground at all, and it was so thick that it was hard to get a smooth surface. If I would try to brush the palette knife marks out, sometimes you would get those streaks from the brushes. And I was reading reviews online and reading the product information again, and they said you can thin it like 5 parts ground to 1 part Gamsol or some sort of thinner. And since trying that now, the paintings, it's a lot easier to get a smoother surface, I've noticed, and it dries like twice as fast, which is really nice. So that's what I've been doing. But because I'm using Gamsol, that's also part of the reason I really have to circulate some airflow in the room. All right, we have a video clip here. This is sort of a quick, little commercial that I kind of put together for this show that I'm talking about, and I'm hoping that most of the video will show up here. We'll see if, oh my goodness. Let's see if I can go back. Maybe the Finder folder route isn't the best way to go for presenting slides here, but this is a 48-second clip that I put together for this pop-up show that I'm doing in August. So this is going to be used, kind of to promote the show and just share kind of an intro on this body of work that I'm going to be presenting. So let's see if the audio works here too.
My name is Hector Acuna, and I'm an artist living in Grafton, Wisconsin. I would like to invite you to my pop-up solo exhibition in August of 2024. The paintings, which span 2 years of combining studio and plein air methods, will be exhibited at Task Creative in Cudahy, Wisconsin. The exhibition is titled You Can Go Anywhere But You Are Where You Came From. It will be on view only for the weekend of August 16th through the 18th. There is a reception scheduled for Saturday, August 17th, and you can find more information and RSVP at acunaarts.com. Please save the date and share this announcement with friends and family. Hope to see you there, and thank you for your support.
And there you have it. So there's a little promo for the show, which was, it's kind of fun to try to document some of the process stuff, like I've been talking about, and to share, just sort of where things are starting, where things are sort of taking the next step from. As I mentioned earlier, some of this work dates back like 2 years, and what's been really interesting is to look back within my portfolio and see certain themes that keep reappearing in different ways. And this show, the title of the show comes from a song by the band Manchester Orchestra from their album A Black Mile to the Surface, which is one of my favorite albums by the band. It's one of my favorite albums probably of all time. And it's from their song called The Silence, which is, the music is kind of dark, it's kind of moody, but there's a line in that song, the show title, "You can go anywhere, but you are where you came from," that I've really just sort of kind of, circled back to in my mind over the last couple of years, whether I'm working in my studio or if I'm working outside in plein air. I mean, obviously traveling for plein air events and just painting outside when you're moving around different locations, there is this interesting realization that I had about, every painting I'm making outside on location is preserving this moment in time. And who we are as artists is affected by our histories. And whether I'm working from observation outside or in my studio, I feel like there's always going to be this channel or this funneling of influences and information or inspiration that we can trace back in time. And with this particular show that I'm preparing, I'm consciously trying to keep a lot of the subject matter fairly open, and also the process of the work fairly open-ended as well. And let me see if I can just bring our image more in frame here real quick. That should work. So some of the work that's in the show is stuff that I created in plein air on location. There is this theme of this visual motif of boxes and hands that I've been experimenting with in my studio work. And then if you're familiar with some of the work I made over the past year, you may have seen paintings that I created where, I built a box and some props out of wood and other materials that I then staged outside on location, and I painted, plein air paintings of them. And so when I was talking earlier about this kind of symbiotic relationship between what I'm doing in the studio and what I'm doing outside, that's an example of where ideas are starting to kind of cross that line. And in my head, creatively, I feel like the division between what I'm doing outside and what I'm doing in the studio is starting to kind of diminish, which for me is really exciting. I think that's what I want my work to start to do. And so just to give you more information about what else I'm doing for the show. So these larger canvases, I kind of debated for a while, like, should I do really large plein air observational paintings? Should I do stuff from imagination? Should I make paintings from images and photographs? And I kind of returned to a process I used to use a lot when I was in grad school and even leading into grad school, which was incorporating more digital collage painting techniques and generating images as reference material for large paintings now. And so in April, this is one of the things I was doing quite a bit on my iPad was, sorry, I'm just talking as I'm rearranging things here. I generated a few different ideas and designs in a program called Autodesk Sketchbook. So if you are someone with an iPad and you do a lot of digital drawing, you may already be familiar with that program. If not, it's one that I usually recommend to students and to artists that maybe want to incorporate more digital tools and techniques without having to subscribe to Photoshop. Autodesk is a free program. Actually, Autodesk is the company, the software company that makes Sketchbook, and then the actual product is called Sketchbook. So anyways, these are a couple of digital collages that I created in April for these large canvases. So kind of giving you a little preview of the process here and sharing some of the initial ideas for these paintings. And I've already started 2 of the canvases, and I have 2 or 3 also fairly large scale primed canvases ready to go. You can kind of see some of them leaning over here. The first image that I showed you is the one that is inspiring this painting over on the wall, and that's the 5 foot tall by 4 foot wide surface that I was talking about. This is my image for the 6 foot wide by 4 foot tall canvas. Thanks, Todd, for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed the discussion. Sorry for all of the crazy mishaps too. Hopefully those have ended for the video today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. And this is one now that I will probably use as a starting place for a 3 by 4 foot canvas, the other surface that I built in April. I have yet to start that one. This is another example of a collage that I made last month, and trying to do this, you can see the whole design. I don't know if I'll use this for the show, but what's been really fun about this process of incorporating digital tools is that I can keep them as a digital file. I can print them, which is what I've started to do with these initial designs. And I'm painting more from the printed image as opposed to the digital image, which is kind of new for me as well. I used to do a lot of designing and composing for paintings in this program that I'm talking about, but I would paint from like a laptop screen or a desktop screen or the iPad screen. And because of that, you're able to zoom in and really get close to small areas of the reference image. And I didn't always like that ability because it's almost like when you're painting outside in plein air and your eye starts to focus on something that's really far away, but your focal point in your painting maybe is in the foreground or the middle ground of your painting, and it's not going to suit your painting to render every tiny detail if you're directing the eye in a particular place. And I kind of had that same problem when I was working from a screen, because I could zoom in and really see the details of something that maybe would have been more suitable if it was more abstract, or if it was simplified, or somehow pushed back in space in one way or another. So working from a physical printed copy of these designs so far has been really helpful to not get distracted by small moments and small interactions of shape and color and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's kind of a little preview of what I'm working on in my studio right now, and I have a few months to finish off these large paintings. What I'm also very conscious of with this work right now is that these designs aren't necessarily going to be the destination of the paintings. And this is something that I love, but also sometimes hate about studio painting, is that it's really easy to kind of get pulled into this process of like just continuing to paint and change the idea over and over and over and over again, which, when I work outdoors, I feel like I see my subject and I eventually hit a point in my process where I kind of know where I want the painting to go. Maybe there's things I want to simplify or things I really want to render and really want to pull forward in focus. But I can only work with what's in front of me. It's not like I can go and park a car or do, and like change a tree and really adjust things really quickly. Where in the studio, I take a lot more of those liberties of just totally letting go of an idea and starting something else. And before you know it, a painting has gone through 10 or 15 iterations that really drastically change from start to finish. So I'm going to be mindful of how much I'm letting go of these initial ideas for reference, but it's also why I'm not worried about showing you some of these designs, because for all I know, the paintings might not look anything like these designs, and it'll make it exciting to share where they started. Also, a digital sketching process that I was working on last month was not for painting, but for constructing furniture, actually, which is something that I don't have very much experience with. But Megan and I have been wanting to build a little breakfast nook, table, bench, seating area in our kitchen since we moved into our house a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago. And so, we've been talking about this idea for a long time, and, we've gotten too busy, or, we don't know where to start. And we kind of pulled the trigger this past month and really started to plan out the design. We went and purchased our lumber, and we've started to make some progress on the project. And this is a very short little time lapse that I recorded actually in that program, the Sketchbook program. It's kind of cool. They let you record your process, and they'll save it as a time lapse that you can download or use in other videos. And that's the file that I'm playing here. So it's very fast. It's very short. But this was the initial design for the bench that is on the left side of, if you're looking at the profile of our design, this is the left bench. And then we recently actually bought this little table off of Facebook that somebody was selling that that owns a Subway restaurant. They renovated and sold all of the furniture. So we snagged one of their, sort of like mid 2000s era tables for like $20, which is pretty awesome. So that's going to be in the middle of these two benches. And the other side that we're going to start probably tomorrow and this weekend is going to be similar to this, but it's a little bit longer. And we have some ideas for a bookshelf for cookbooks and other storage opportunities. So anyway, this isn't really painting related, I realize, but it's kind of creative still. And what's been interesting about this project already so far is that I'm learning some new things with using plywood and just constructing not just furniture but an object. And it's starting to kind of inform some ideas and inspire some ideas for frames that I might try to make, maybe even for this show in August in Cudahy. So it's fun to share this because, again, kind of like between plein air and studio, I think everything is connected with my process and my practice. And I'm going to, for sure, probably take some inspiration from this building process that Megan and I are encountering right now with our breakfast table build that we have. So, I have some images of us cutting some of the wood in the garage. I built this table at the end of last year in the fall, and it's come in handy for projects like this already, which is really kind of fun to see things already in use. This was probably about 50 to 60% of the way through building that left bench. And, the hardest part for me was figuring out the angle and how to build a structurally sound, portion of the chair at that angle. And, I had to make bevel cuts in the plywood, and this is with 1/2-inch birch plywood. So it's really strong. It looks, I think it looks really nice. The boards that are kind of the armature of the object were ripped down from like 1.5-inch by 6-inch or 8-inch boards that are pine, kind of just like general construction lumber. So that's also, it feels pretty stable and pretty strong as well. But anyway, yeah, I look at stuff like this and I go, how can I use some of these ideas in this process with my paintings and with my frames? So be on the lookout for, breadcrumbs of this project making its way into some of my studio work. So back to painting now. April was a pretty busy month. So, I had those art shows I went to. I built some new canvases. I was designing my references for the paintings, and I had them printed from a local printing shop here in Grafton. And you can see kind of in this image where the print of the design is becoming very useful and very handy as I'm working. So I have it taped to a scrap piece of 1/4-inch plywood which I found out also slides into the top of my painting cart really, easily, and I can just rest it at an angle right by my palette. So it's almost like I'm painting from a desktop kind of setup, but I don't have to worry about getting distracted by, everything I talked about earlier when working from a digital photo. So it's been really useful for color matching, and I've been kind of intuitively transferring the information to the canvas. I'm not using a projector. I'm not really using a grid. I kind of used a very generic large grid to split the canvas kind of into quarters or maybe into like sixths, and I would mimic that on my reference photo or print. And then just kind of like freehand would block in things. A tool that I don't have pictured in the slideshow that has become very useful, and I'm like wondering, like, why didn't I try this or incorporate this or find this earlier in my process? But a lot of my designs are very geometric. As you can see, there's a lot of squares and rectangles and triangles, and even the shapes that have kind of a curved edge, some of those angles are fairly straight. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll just bring in a scrap piece of wood and I'll use that as a straight edge to draw out some of those shapes. And the problem I've had when I've done this in the past is a lot of times I'll make a line and then I'll step back and the line isn't like square or straight or parallel to something else that needs to be parallel. And then I'm looking at a line that's kind of angled, and it just really kind of bugs me because that's not what I'm going for in the painting, right? I want the design of my printed image to, kind of be repeated in the painting. And I really am trying to kind of mimic the same. Oh, sorry about that. I'm just trying to adjust my window again here, which half of the time that this is happening, these problems with my presentation, is because I'm just messing around with the application. So I apologize for that, but I promise the next stream will be much more reliable in terms of the technology. Maybe I'll try to just make a slideshow on Google Slides and see if that works. It's strange because I've used the Finder like window before and didn't have these problems, so I'm not sure what I was doing differently before. But anyway, so here's an example of that first painting in progress, kind of blocking in the big shapes. Another kind of material, just sort of, little thing you can maybe incorporate or try out if you're also a studio painter and you're trying to avoid working with solvent. There is a thinner. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for tuning in today. No, it's really cool that you're here. I appreciate it. But there's this thinner that I've been using from, I think it's called Chelsea Classical Studios. And it's a natural solvent made with spike oil. And they kind of like mask any sort of aroma with lavender. So it's called lavender spike oil. And it'll thin out your oil paint. It's kind of similar to Gamsol. If you're used to working with Gamsol, you might notice it's a little bit, it has some slightly different properties in terms of like the drying speed and how much of it you need to actually thin out your paint. But that's what I've been using to thin out my oil paint and put these big shapes of color on the canvases initially. And I've used it over the past 2 or 3 years now, and mostly I use it in like the first block in step, and then every layer after that is pretty much just the paint, maybe thinned a little bit with oleo gel from Natural Pigments or Rublev Colors. They make oleo gel, which is a linseed oil based kind of gel medium, as the name suggests, and it'll bring a little bit of a glossiness into the paint, but then as soon as the paint dries, it seems like it sort of evaporates out and you're left with a little bit more of a matte surface quality, which that might not suit everyone's feel and style that they want in their paintings, but those two materials are very safe to use inside with minimal ventilation. So As I mentioned, I work downstairs in our basement, and luckily I have two of these small little, sort of basement windows. One of them currently opens. The other one, the past owners, I think, just like painted it shut. So I have to figure out how to get through the paint and crack open that other window, which will be nice because then air can really circulate all the way through. Anyway, so having those safe materials and mediums is really important when working with oils if you're in a space like I am. All right, so this is the other painting, almost all the way blocked in. I wasn't as adamant on preserving the process and really documenting earlier stages. So this was one of the first images that I took of this six foot wide painting, and it feels really good, to tell you the truth, to have this much space for painting. I remember when I was in grad school, I was working on larger paintings, and part of that was I had more space. I had the wood shop in the art building. I had people there to help me figure out how to transport them and to build them. And, coming out of graduate school and working in much smaller spaces that are usually where I live, working on large paintings hasn't always been feasible and, convenient. So this feels like the first time since grad school I've really scaled up again. And, it only took like 4 years, or pretty much 4 years to do that. So I'm very excited to be painting from the shoulder as opposed to just like your wrist or your elbow. And also just to have an image that you're working on that's almost the same scale as yourself, I think is really unique. And it starts to inform things you do with the painting, and I think scale is something that is sometimes overlooked nowadays, especially in like the digital realm of the art world. Like even here on YouTube, like I'm showing you images of paintings, and I'm glad that some of them are kind of in situ because you can get a sense of, if my ceiling is like 6 or maybe 7 feet tall, it shows you where the painting sits within the room. Compared to my little painting tabaret cart, you can kind of get a sense for, if you were standing there, what would your relationship be to the work? Otherwise, if I just have the image cropped, it's really hard to gauge that sense of scale, which to me is really, really, vital to the effect of a work of art, and so anyway, it feels really fun and exciting to be able to work on some larger paintings again. So this is the painting pretty much blocked in, and this is where it is currently sitting in terms of progress as things are drying with that spike oil, which, like I was kind of saying, it does have a little bit of a different drying speed compared to turpentine or mineral spirits, which I think within a day it feels like things dry out really fast with turpentine. But with the spike oil, I've noticed that certain colors just take a lot longer to dry. And I don't know if that's the pigment and the linseed oil, like something about their chemical makeup. I'd love to learn more about that. So maybe that's something I'll research in the next few months. But like for example, in this painting, the greenish, this bright green shape on the right side is still kind of wet to the touch. And the dark, thicker area of paint that's over here is pretty much dry. So it's weird how, even like the consistency of the paint doesn't always matter with drying speeds. Here's another little video clip I can show you here. I don't know if this has sound. I don't think it does, but we'll find out here in a second. This is just a little clip I put together, I think, as a reel for Instagram and just social media. Yeah, it doesn't look like it has any sound, but you can see actually this tool that I was starting to talk about with having straight lines. I don't think I actually ever described what that was. So this piece of wood with a level that's been taped to it is my new handy little tool that, I'm sure a lot of artists probably have figured this out, but it's been kind of a breakthrough step in this process of working with very geometric paintings. And basically, if your painting is squared on your easel or on your wall, or level, I should say, not squared, any line that you're making that's level with your level tool is going to, be square or parallel to your edges of your canvas, which, again, when this was something I kind of saw because I keep a level on my painting card since it has a magnetic little strip on it. It's been in my surroundings for so long, I've never thought to actually use it while I'm painting. And, up until now, it's really just been used to check to make sure that my paintings are level when I'm hanging them on my wall or on my easel. And, if there's things I'm trying to do just freehand that I want to be parallel or square to the canvas, I'll play this again just as I'm finishing this story. Having the level to make sure that your painting is in the right place is really helpful. But this is a tool now that I'm kind of like, I wonder how else I can use this in my process. Like even if I'm not working from a reference that's, geometric, if I'm just painting, from observation or from imagination, and I want things to have a very sharp edge and play around with things being level, how else can I use this in my process? So, this might be something I'll throw in my backpack when I'm working in plein air. We'll see. But anyway, the clip is showing you this small kind of painting within a painting, part of the reference of a beach ball that I think originally was from a photo that I took at I think it was like my nephew's birthday party or some sort of family event with my nephew, and I had cropped into the beach ball. I just liked the way the beach ball, just sort of was sitting on the ground, and I felt like its form and its shape really suits some of the other things that are happening in this image and this the digital collage that I was putting together. And something that I've been doing a lot, both in the studio work and the plein air work, is painting frames of a space or frames of a small subject within, or stacked on top of or stacked below other spaces that I'm also painting from somewhere else. And I tried this idea initially in 2022 outdoors in plein air at an event in Jefferson, Wisconsin. And it was a really kind of breakthrough moment for, possibilities in composing, possibilities in creating narratives with plein air, juxtapositions of, different subject matter, and really thinking about the relationship between both of those things. And it kind of opened up my process to feel a little bit more, not just creative, but a little bit more flexible with, what kind of painting can I make if I'm painting outside in plein air? And how can I maybe introduce some of the stuff I've done with the studio work into the, perceptual process of being outside? So anyway, the studio paintings are kind of incorporating that compositional framework as well, which I'm really excited about that too. Okay, another painting that I just recently actually finished, and after starting it, let's see if I can, just trying to give us a little bit more room here so we can see what the painting is. Slide things over here a little bit. That should work. This is a painting that is, I think it's 26 by 26 inches, maybe 24 by 24. And this was actually also started from a digital composition, kind of a photo collage with a little bit of digital painting. And it's gone through 2 or 3 different kind of conceptual ideas, and then also, formal ideas. So originally, the idea was to have a box with 2 hands, which again is a motif I've been exploring as a very basic, expressive, visual tool or character, and to situate in different arrangements and to just sort of discover meaning and discover ideas. What's been really fun about this is that each painting kind of adds to this longer, not discussion, but longer history of ideas. And I like this idea of space and proximity between 2 hands and what we can kind of assume or relate to that that kind of arrangement or that positioning of the body, and this was an idea that I remember I initially had sketched out in one of my Moleskine sketchbooks. Just, I think it was at night as I was falling asleep, I was making a ton of these little tiny thumbnail gesture drawings, just to preserve different ideas and to generate possibilities for paintings. And what I then was doing would, I would reflect on some of these sketches in my sketchbook, and then I would either photograph or document through video my own hands, my wife's hands in my hands, my brother, I think, was a model for some of these references. And then it kind of brought to life these initial ideas for gesture or for arrangement. And this was one that my wife and I had our hands sort of, connected. And I cut out this piece of cardboard with 2 holes that was kind of a prop for taking reference material. Because part of painting in plein air so much the last couple of years, one of the things that it's really shifted about my studio work is wanting to incorporate more of a believable sense of light, and to portray a moment that feels like it really exists in space. And a lot of that is going to funnel from the depiction of light. A lot of people talk about how light describes form, but also when you think about space, in one sort of light source, if it's a natural space that's not, synthetically lit with lights or anything like that, you have to be really sensitive about, shadow depictions and the character of your shapes and the transitions of light to dark, the intensity of your color to, chroma versus achromatic, all of those little variables that we learn about when we're learning to paint, then start to inform our own familiarity with how light operates, right? And working in a very synthetic approach where I'm creating a moment through photography and through gesture drawing. I can't just go out and watch this object exist. That becomes the challenge then for me that's really enjoyable as the maker, is like, how do I create this moment that you maybe start to really believe in through all of these different tools and elements that I've been really practicing with my plein air work. And so anyway, that was the sort of like impetus or like initial inspiration for this painting. And I mentioned that it went through a few iterations. So initially this shape inside the box that we're looking, into the interior of that space was going to be some sort of natural environmental reference. Like I think at one point in my digital drawings, I had an image of clouds that I had sort of like superimposed into the box, but then I didn't like that idea, so I just sort of painted over it. And then I took it outside and I was like, why don't I just fill that space with something that I can observe from observation outside or from life outside. And I had painted these tulips, which is kind of funny because I'm going to talk about tulips as I wrap up today's conversation. So I think about a year ago, I was doing a plein air session with this painting of painting tulips inside of the box. And I thought that was sort of the final idea. I thought that was going to really work. And then I let the painting sit for like 6 months, and I started to not like where the painting was, because most of the rest of what we can see is kind of original to the process and to the idea. The hands didn't really change, the box, the environment of the space didn't really change, even the shadow didn't change. It's really what's inside the box that kept changing. So then I brought it back in the studio and I kind of glazed over the flowers, and I was trying to make it interesting in some way. So I was obscuring that information through somewhat transparent layers of paint and seeing if that would generate something else. At one point I started to incorporate this like dot, almost impressionistic brush making step into the process. I was looking at a lot of Monet paintings or reproductions of his paintings at this time. And I have, there's a book on him that I was looking at, I remember, over the summer and fall of last year. And I think that's what kind of fed into that step there. But then I didn't like that after a few weeks, and then the painting sat for like 5 months again, and I didn't touch it at all until probably about 2 months ago. I just sort of was like, I need to do something really bold to just kind of shake things up with this painting and, get it farther away from where it currently is, and then decide what to do or if that is working. And the hard part for me in this context is like when you already have a painting that's somewhat it's saying something that's already pretty specific, right? So this painting, like I said, most of it didn't change. I had this very red, almost monochromatic painting, and I think part of the issue I was having was I was introducing another hue or another sort of color relationship into the space of the box, and I didn't like what was happening in terms of color in the, like, at large with this painting. So I decided, why don't I just stay within the hue of red and just try something with red that maybe isn't objective, it's not representational, and just do something that's a bit more, visceral and textural. And so I just started putting in this really rich, dark, mostly cad red. I think it's like a cad red medium base, and work with pretty thick paint and just see what can happen. And this is where it ended up, and I really like it. And then I went back to the hands and started sort of rendering the hands a little bit further. And one of the last decisions that I contributed into the painting was this sort of, I don't know how to put this into words. There's this kind of, magical, mystical area of information. I don't want to zoom in here because I feel like it's going to totally mess with the presentation, but I'll be putting this painting on my website probably in the next week, so you can always go and really zoom in on my portfolio there. But there's this greenish, wispy, sort of I don't know, non-objective shape that keeps repeating and moving up out of the hands. And I really liked this kind of otherworldly, maybe spiritual, energetic kind of subject, how it interacted with the hands. So I'm really excited about that particular, maybe discovery is the right word for that. Because again, this wasn't part of the initial idea. And honestly, that came out of frustration because earlier, months and months and months ago, I was working on the hands and I didn't like how it was going, and I ended up just sort of brushing out the color that I had just put on, and it created this streaky, like very atmospheric and subtle streak, above the hands that made that red color a little bit more muted, a little bit more chalky. But I really liked what happened. I liked how it created this sort of buzz and this visual noise in the space of the painting. Like this was a physical, almost like mist or steam coming out of the hands. It felt like a physical thing. And then the painting sat like that for a while. And, once I put in these green little wispy marks, it felt like, okay, this is some sort of other object or form that's in the painting. And then it felt finished, because for a long time it was like, oh, I just have the hands and the box and I don't know what's in the box. And if you're a painter, that sometimes you're working on something and you go, it needs something else. Like it's almost there, but I just need some other, instrument or element or, moment to complement or to counter what I already have. And that was that moment in this painting for me, was that green addition there. Anyway, let's keep moving, just because it's I have a little bit left to still talk about, and I don't want to take up too much more time. But so back outside, some news about plein air work that I was doing. I was scheduled for the Art Servancy residency that I sort of opened today's presentation with earlier in the talk. And, this is the other painting that I had mentioned I've been putting most of my time into. This panel is, I think, 24 by 24, 26 by 26, excuse me. So for me, again, this is a relatively big canvas, especially for plein air painting. And it's depicting, as we can see, this tree trunk of what I've recently learned is a maple tree. In the spring, like late winter, early spring, before leaves are starting to kind of bud out, you don't really know what certain trees are. And one of the last sessions that I worked on the painting, I brought binoculars and I was able to see some of the very top buds and leaves on this tree, and I could tell that they were maple leaves. So that was kind of a fun realization this week. But anyway, this painting now has 8 different sessions behind it, and if I'm calculating the hours right, I think it has maybe a little over 20 hours of painting time. And The tricky thing is that it was an afternoon painting, so you really only have like 3 to 4 hours of fairly consistent light. And even with that, certain days were more cloudy than other days. And, it's kind of this Frankenstein of time in this painting. But I learned a lot in this process. And I think the painting is finished at this moment. It's done. We'll see if I add anything to it or change anything. But I'm really happy with where it's ended up. Earlier this week on Monday, I had to meet a photographer who works with Gallery 224 in Port Washington, and he runs this blog that incorporates artist features and interviews about the Artservancy residency program. So I met with him on Monday to take some photos, and this was right after we had finished. He started photographing some of the flowers that were blooming, like Dutchman's breeches, I think is what he was photographing there. There's also some trillium that we saw. But anyway, I stayed after the photo shoot, and I tried an idea that I've had for probably about a year now that I've been wanting to just sort of test and see if I would like it, which incorporates mirrors that are staged outside in plein air. And I'd been thinking about this, kind of daydreaming about doing this with this particular painting because it's a fairly symmetrical painting. It's kind of a portrait of this tree. I thought it would be interesting to incorporate some sort of reflected portrait or reflected figure, or just some sort of reflected space. And I brought this little like 8-inch by 8-inch mirror with another easel and set it up. And he actually, Eddie is the name of the photographer. He actually took photos of me, setting up the mirror and starting to incorporate the mirror. But he left before I actually had time to start painting in that square. But this is looking at where the painting ended up after the first session. And then this is a video that I took, I think, after the second day. So I started doing the reflection on Monday, and then I went back on Tuesday to basically finish up the portrait. So here's a look at the portrait. And it looks like there's sound. I'm not sure. This must just be the sound of the woods in Bratt Woods. But it looks like actually this is from the first day as well. So this is just my initial progress after one, like maybe 2-hour session working on the portrait. And this is what the space looks like where I've been painting. One of the things that's really kind of cool about this painting is that, like a lot of my plein air paintings, they're these sort of like time capsules, and especially if they're painted over multiple days. Like I said, this is documentation after the 7th session. So I started the painting, I think it was on February 1st or 2nd. And, I basically finished it like May 1st, and so it's taken me a few months to produce this painting, and that's not really counting April. I didn't really work on it in April. So it's mostly throughout February, March, and then it was finished at the beginning of May. But because of that window of the season, a lot of the landscape changed quite drastically. Like if you look at the background of the painting along the river sort of horizon line, a lot of the branches and the grass is pretty. Here's another video that I'll play while I'm chatting here. A lot of that grass is really muted. It's very like ochre, and you can kind of see in the video there, it's almost this golden color. And in the video, you can see how green everything is now. So it's interesting to think about the season, the time of the year, and like I said, by combining two different moments within one painting, the reflection now has this very lush green landscape behind me that, to me, I think is really interesting now, and how that relates to the space in the painting and how time now is being portrayed in a much more obvious difference in terms of color, in terms of light. But this is pretty much where the painting is now. This is kind of the finished state of the painting, which again, like I've been saying, it's really exciting to see this new idea like as a physical example. It's only existed kind of in my imagination for the last year or so. And I already have ideas of like, how else can I incorporate a reflected space? And for those of you who are familiar with my plein air work, painting reflections and painting windows and painting mirrored sort of material and planes is not new for me. I like the abstraction of how light bounces off of very reflective spaces and the kind of the fracturing or fragmenting of whatever it is that's being reflected. Sometimes it's very abstract and skewed, and it's this weird, playful, in my opinion, this kind of playful version of reality. And I like that skewed representation. But to me, it's very real. I'm painting exactly how it appears to me. And I'm trying to match the colors. I'm trying to match the shapes. I'm trying to match, how things are being kind of blended together and sort of pulled together. Again, some of this depends on the form and the volume of the object. Like if it's a car, sometimes the reflection is sort of bending and curving with the window or the shape of the car. Sometimes the window has like a filtered kind of vellum or something that changes the color properties or changes the value of something. So there's all of this interesting like disruption happening in the reflection. To me, that's where a lot of my interest is right now, is this idea of perception and how material, especially if it's like industrial or man-made and inorganic, reflecting an organic space now, to me is really exciting and really interesting. So conceptually, that's where a lot of my work is, I think, heading right now, both for studio work and for plein air work. But I'm really kind of excited to, in some ways, kind of debut this new step in my process for those of you who are watching today. And then this is a quick just palette, little palette reference for those of you who are into color and color theory and that kind of stuff. And the image of this palette was from the first day of painting the reflection in Bratt Woods. So you can see there's a very big difference in terms of saturation and chroma. The vividness and the purity of the color really shifted between both days. So here things are, the families of color hues are pretty much the same. It's just their intensity and their chroma is much more pure that second day. And honestly, that's a pretty good example of my process when I'm painting from observation. I tend to try out, the beginning of my process is generally fairly muted or achromatic. And then I slowly increase the chroma as the layers start to stack in the painting. So anyway, it's always kind of fun to see those direct color relationships on the palette, and talking about color theory and talking about the relativity of color, for something to appear very warm, having something cooler next to it there's going to be this sort of dual mutual impact. And that there's a term that Joseph Albers, I think it was Joseph Albers or Itten, one of the two, kind of coined this simultaneous contrast term to define this perceptual phenomenon that happens when we take two colors and we bring them directly against one another. One of them is going to inform something about the other and vice versa. So if you're painting, and I always tell this to my students, if you're painting and you want something to seem very, high contrast, like this green, sticky note here, if you place a color that's it's opposite, or somewhat opposite, it's going to really intensify the properties of color number one, right? And so this orange strip, here the orange strip is still pretty vibrant, but as soon as we introduce the green, that orange starts to kind of electrify, right, and intensify. So when you're painting and you're working with color, even if you're, working with dry materials like pastels or colored pencils, the medium doesn't matter. It's the property of the color that really matters. And the more we study those relationships and that relativity, I think it empowers us as painters to, really communicate something in the way that we intend it to be communicated, right? And to say something with a lot of meaning and a lot of intentionality, I think, is important. So anyway, it's always fun to nerd out on some of that stuff. So there's two things I have left to talk about, and the first of which is very relevant to today, and it deals with the Plymouth Art Center, which is located in Plymouth, Wisconsin, which, from like, let's say Milwaukee, it's probably a little over an hour, depending on traffic, to get there. It's just pretty much straight north from Milwaukee. And I was invited to jury and judge with awards their annual juried exhibition, which I have their little printout here. It's called Alive in the Arts, and this year is the 29th annual juried exhibition, which is really impressive that they're coming up on 30 years of this, just this exhibition, not the gallery, but it's pretty cool to know it's been around that long. And apparently, I'll put this on record too. I was recommended as a judge / juror by the artist Steve Putrick. He was the one who kind of suggested my name to them. I don't know if he couldn't do it or if that's what had happened, but regardless, if Steve ever watches this, or if you know Steve, that just proves how nice and thoughtful of a person he is. So big thank you to Steve. But anyway, the reception for the show is tonight. I think it's from 5 to 7:30. So if you're catching this the day of, on Friday, May 3rd, you have time to prepare to go to the show. If it's within where you live, if it's close to where you live. So at 6 o'clock, it looks like is when the award ceremony will happen. So they're going to, give me some time to share context behind choices that I made for the awards and just share kind of general feedback on the show. And I'm always excited to share my thoughts. Obviously, here I am live streaming a presentation. So if you're around, it'd be great to see you. And if you're watching this after Friday, May 3rd, keep an eye on the dates for the show. It runs until August 2nd. So again, if you're local to Plymouth or Milwaukee, kind of southeast Wisconsin, or even like Sheboygan is really close by, make some time to come see this show. It's, I'm biased because I juried the show, but there's a lot of really strong work. There's a lot of variety. There's a lot of, varying themes and materials and modes of expression. And it was an honor to, have the responsibility to, in some ways, kind of curate the show from the pool of entries and to, just have a very small role in this exhibition is really cool. Okay, so if you do see the show, let me know what you think. That's part of why we make art, right? Is to generate conversation and to share our perspectives. So the last thing now to talk about, as I again kind of play around with my Finder folder here, is to talk about flowers and tulips. As I had started to kind of mention a few images ago, this spring, Megan and I have been really enjoying these flowers that the previous homeowners had planted in our yard, both in the front yard and in our backyard. And in the last week, the tulips have really started to bloom, and there's some that are really potent and really colorful. And I don't call myself a flower painter or even a flora painter. Or fauna, I kind of stick to just spaces and architectural spaces and stuff like that. But when I was seeing these flowers popping up, and Megan then had sort of plucked a few or cut a few and brought them inside in a very small little vase that we have. I kept walking past our table this week and seeing these 2 tulips sitting in a vase and was like, man, there's so many, possibilities for paintings just in that little still life of the flowers. That last night I did just that. I made a little still life painting with one of my cigar box painting boxes, and brought one of my linen panels upstairs. And this size of this panel is a little bit odd. It was cut down from a piece of birch plywood, 1/4-inch birch plywood, so it's fairly thin and lightweight. And I mounted a piece of linen and primed it and everything. But this was kind of a scrap piece of the other panels that I was cutting at that time. So I didn't want to throw it away, and I thought, it's still kind of a satisfying ratio. But the dimensions on this are 8 inches tall by 7, a little over 7.5 inches wide. Like it's probably 7 and 9/16 or 7 and 5/8. But so if I frame it, I'm probably going to have to build a custom little frame for it. But anyway, I painted this last night while I was watching the score of the Bucks game against the Pacers, and it was a nice distraction from the heartbreak of watching the Bucks leave the first round of the playoffs 2 years in a row. I'm definitely, in terms of sports, I think basketball is my favorite sport to follow for Wisconsin sports. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've really, I've paid more attention to how the Bucks are doing every year. Obviously, 2021 was a really fun year, a very celebratory year. But since then, it's been kind of rough to follow the Bucks. And last night was just kind of another example of frustration with the, just how things turn out with injuries and coaching and all of that stuff. So I worked on this study of these 2 tulips, which you can see in the vase in this image here. And one of the things that was kind of interesting about making this painting was that I knew I wanted to paint something last night at 5 o'clock. I was like, I feel like painting something from life or just making a small little study of something. And initially I wasn't sure if I was going to paint from one of my digital kind of photo collage references that I've been working on, or if I was going to paint from imagination or from observation. And I was like, I'll just start by putting a palette together. And this was where I started last night, actually. So I pulled out some of my paint and I took paint from my main painting cart, which is right behind me over there. I'm trying to be better about not wasting paint. And when I have 2 or 3 different palettes that I'm working and bouncing between, whether it's for outside work or the studio, I've been really bad at letting paint on one of the palettes dry out and, become, unusable, which is a bummer because some of the paint is not cheap. But anyway, I was taking some of the colors off of this palette here, and I knew I wanted to do something with orange as a starting color. So, I mixed my cadmium orange with my cadmium red light just to kind of find this analogous version of those 2 colors. And then I had pulled a very neutral, somewhat warm, dark, mixture that was kind of a palette scraping mixture after a painting session recently. And that's this color next to the reddish orange. And then I brought in a cool because I thought, maybe I'll want to do something that has a little bit more range in temperature, and pulled out a tube of Prussian blue, which I used to use a lot when I was in college in Stevens Point. And, after I graduated, it was on my palette a lot. And then somewhere along the line, I just kind of stopped using it. And I figured if there's only one blue on this palette, why not try Prussian blue out again? And then I was very conscious about value, right? And when we start with a palette, a lot of times we're looking almost at the full range of value that we're going to have access to, especially in our bright colors. Our dark colors, sometimes we can mix together and get a darker version, which is what happens if you mix these 2 together. But in terms of my cutoff for my brightest value, I didn't want to go with just pure titanium white, so I mixed a little bit of this orange in with the white and got this, sort of buttery yellow off-white color. And that was my palette for the painting that I would figure out to make, because again, at that point I didn't know what I was going to be painting. So when I saw the flowers, I was like, well, I'm going to use this palette and see what happens. And it was a really fun challenge, and thankfully it kind of simplified some of the challenges that I encountered in the process, because as we can see in this sort of end of the process photo that I snapped last night, the light was really dark in our little extra kind of sunroom area where I was painting and, keeping track of the Bucks game. When I started the painting at 5:30 or maybe 6, there was still a lot of daylight coming through our windows and our sliding door. And the palette was more high key in the painting, and then as the sun set and the light source was only from this single piano light that I use for nocturnes, the painting reference totally changed, and the contrast changed, the color relationships changed. So I'm glad I only had those 5 colors to start with, 5 or 6 colors to start with. It kept it a bit easier to navigate, where I would push the value or the chroma or the hue of something. And this is where it ended up. I took this photo this morning before I compiled everything for the presentation today. And this one is a little bit more in shadow. This photo is in direct sunlight. So between the two, there's a big difference, but you can kind of get a sense for what the color looks like if you were to see this in person, and what some of the value relationships look like. But I'm really glad that I took the time to sit down and try this subject, to try this painting and this palette. And I learned a few things too, which was really, it's always nice when you come out of a painting kind of like, I didn't know I could do this, or I didn't know that color had that effect. And one of my favorite things about making this painting is that looking at the flower petals, they're so thin and they're so light visually, that painting them is sometimes tricky to get that sense of luminosity or that sense of translucency in the subject matter. And I lately paint in a very opaque and very geometric kind of style, if you will, that it was fun to start to really rough out the edges of the shapes with more geometric lines, and then over the painting process decide where I wanted to kind of soften things or bring in more of an organic edge to one of the shapes. So that was really fun just to have that part of the process play out that way. So anyway, I think that is the end of today's live stream. It was really fun to come back and return to my YouTube channel and just share some stories with you. And this might, maybe this is something I can continue to do monthly or bi-monthly throughout the year. We'll see how it goes with my schedule. And I'm really looking forward to where this year takes my work. I'm hoping that some of you that maybe have seen this video will maybe come out to my show in August in Cudahy. The reception for that is going to be on August 17th, which is a Saturday. I think it's going to start at 6 o'clock. Maybe we'll go until 8 or 9, depending on the scheduling of that day. But keep an eye on my website for any updates there. You can also go to my homepage and find my full schedule, my full calendar of events, which includes exhibitions, it includes workshops, it includes plein air events. So some of these shows that I talked about, you can find more information right off of my website on the homepage. If you click on the link of the title, whether it's a show or a workshop, it'll take you to another landing page with a lot more information. So yeah, take some time and check that out if you're scoping out my website this weekend. That's it. Thank you again for everyone who tuned in live. Thank you for those of you, Todd and Mark, for entering the chat and sharing some ideas and positive reinforcement. That was very helpful today. And hopefully I'll see everyone in the next live stream. I'll try to be a little bit more prepared in letting you know when I'm going to be going live, maybe a week out of a live stream. So keep an eye on my channel for some of that information as well. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.